President Trump clearly and unambiguously condemned the bigotry, violence, and hatred. We have no tolerance for white supremacists, neo-Nazis, or the KKK.
All right, it is Monday, August 14th. This is a Fox News alert. Vice President Mike Pence making it very clear there is no room here for hate as a suspect in that horrific Charlottesville attack due in court for the first time today, and we are live there.
And in Al-Qaeda has a brand new target. The terror group issuing a chilling new how-to guide for wannabe jihadis looking to carry out a mass attack inside the United States.
And with the NFL season firing up, it is happening again. Colin Kaepernick is out of a job right now, but he's still influencing the NFL in a big way. The brand new national anthem protests we've been seeing. Fox and Friends First starts right now.
Good morning. You are watching Fox and Friends First on this Monday morning. I'm Heather Childers.
And I'm Rob Schmidt. Thanks so much for starting your day with us. And straight to that Fox News alert. In just a few hours from now, the suspect accused of mowing down counter-protesters in Charlottesville, Virginia, will face a judge for the first time.
The court appearance comes as we're learning some more about James.
Accident, calling it a terror attack.
It's just something you don't wake up in the morning and expect to happen for anybody in the world. But when it happens and then it's for really happening, all you can do is just ask God to bless you.
A vigil was held here for the young woman who was killed in Charlottesville this weekend, and there were vigils across the country in her remembrance. And now it's not clear if the Fields, the driver, will physically appear in court today or if he will appear by video. Of course, there are some safety concerns as this town and country mourns the loss of 3 people who were killed in these deadly riots this weekend. So a sad and somber morning here in Charlottesville. Back to you guys in New York.
Okay, Matt, thank you.
Well, Vice President Mike Pence, meantime, doubling down on President Trump's comments, condemning the violence in Charlottesville, and coming to his defense in the face of critics who said that what the president had to say was not enough.
That's right. All this as the Department of Justice opens a hate crime investigation. Kelly Wright joins us now with the very latest. Kelly.
Good morning to you both. As we've seen, it was an ugly and sad chapter in our history in Charlottesville. President Trump spoke to bring an end to it.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides.
President Trump's words did not comfort those reeling in anger and sadness from the deadly racial violence. Republican and Democrat lawmakers are urging the president to strongly denounce the white nationalists.
We got to call it out for what it is. It is hatred, it is bigotry, and our leaders got to be very frank, unequivocal. We will not tolerate that in our country.
To defend the president, the White House issued its own statement defending President Trump, and from his trip in Cuba, Vice President Mike Pence addressed the matter.
We have no tolerance for hate and violence from white supremacists, neo-Nazis, or the KKK. These dangerous fringe groups have no place in American public life and in the American debate, and we condemn them in the strongest possible terms.
That's the Vice President speaking from Cartagena, Colombia. Meanwhile, the Justice Department is conducting a civil rights hate crime investigation on the horrible car crash that killed 1 person and injured 19 others. The feds want to know if the driver, 20-year-old James Fields Jr., planned the attack and if he had any help. The Justice Department, by the way, tells Fox News the driver could be charged with domestic terrorism. Rob, Heather?
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right, so talking about the big discussion over the weekend was whether or not the president's initial statement went far enough. He didn't make any mention of KKK, far-right groups, bigot groups like that. Let's take a look at what the White House came back and actually issued another statement trying to fill in some of the blanks that I think the media and a lot of people on the left say there were. The president said very strongly in his statement yesterday that he condemns all forms of violence, bigotry, and hatred. Of course, that includes white supremacists, KKK, neo-Nazi, and all extremist groups. He called for national unity and bringing all Americans together. So that's the clarification from the White House on the president's response.
But then the question is, was there a need for clarification? I mean, he said that he condemned in the strongest of terms, but then I think the problem was he said that there's been violence from all sides, so he wasn't specifically talking about the white supremacists.
Yeah, he just kind of made a blanket statement about hate in general.
You know, will anything be enough? And apparently for people like Maxine Waters, that will not. She put on Twitter this statement right here. Trump has made it clear with Bannon and Gorka in the White House and the Klan in the streets, it is now the white supremacist house. Hashtag Charlottesville.
Yeah, well, and I think I can understand a lot of the issues with the president's initial statement. I think Maxine Waters, of course, takes it way too far the other way. And this is exactly why we have problems like this in this country, is because we've got politicians that take things so extreme to one side or the other, and then you have people who aren't too bright that hear this and are emboldened by it, and it happens on the left and the right. Let's listen to what Newt Gingrich has to say.
If you're fair to him, the statement itself was pretty strong and pretty direct about condemning the violence, condemning bigotry. I mean, he talks very specifically about condemning racism. But I agree, I think that clearly he should talk out much more aggressively about it. I'd also point out, though, from a conservative perspective, we've been watching a rising tide of violence in this country for a good while now. And, you know, when the chancellor of the University of California, Berkeley, is spending $9,000 for an escape door, because they assume students will occupy his office. It just tells you that we had this pattern in this building, and it's on both sides. It's dangerous. I'm delighted Attorney General Sessions has sent a Justice Department team down there. Every person engaged in violence in Charlottesville should be frankly locked up. But the truth is the same on college campuses across the country. We have to decide violence is unacceptable. You can have free speech, but you can't have violence.
And that's absolutely right. You know, I do want to say, though, I was interested to look back at what President Obama had to say following the Dylan Roof shooting that happened in Charleston, South Carolina, that clearly connected to white supremacy. Dylan Roof admitted so, said so himself. And President Obama's initial statement right after that shooting, although he did talk about racism in America, he did not specify white supremacy. He did not specify and call them out either. And he said, you know, the FBI is investigating it. We have to pause and take a look, and we'll say more when we find it out. And he also called it senseless murders. He did not call it, you know, domestic terrorism either.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what we hear today, and if President Trump does any clarifications of his own.
I have a feeling he might.
He might.
We'll see. Well, Fox News alert for you, though. At this point, a manhunt is underway after 3 people are gunned down at a racetrack in Wisconsin. Police say that the victims were shot at point-blank range near a food vendor at the Great Lakes Dragway south of Milwaukee. And police have no idea what happened before the shooting. Nearly 5,000 people were at that racing event. No one else was injured.
Well, 2 American soldiers are dead, killed while fighting in Iraq. U.S. military officials say the service members died during combat training operations. They were not killed by enemy contact. 5 others hurt in that incident. None of the soldiers at this point have been identified, and no further details are available at this hour. We'll keep you posted on that. Also, as tensions reach a boiling point with North Korea, the U.S. is preparing to fight and to win. American forces now conducting joint military exercises with Japan, and they say they're getting ready for anything. Although the director of the CIA says we are safe for now.
There's nothing imminent today, but make no mistake about it, the continuation, the increased chance that there'll be a nuclear missile in Denver is a very serious threat, and the administration is going to treat it as such.
While this comes amid reports North Korea is calling its ambassadors to China, Russia, and the UN back to North Korea for a meeting there.
Well, a major blow to the dangerous terror group Al-Shabaab. Its co-founder and former deputy has surrendered. Mukhtar Robo Abu Mansour turned himself in to the Somali government. Well, he left the terror group 4 years ago and has been hiding in the jungle ever since. The U.S. canceled a $5 million bounty on him in June. It's not clear what the Somali government plans to do with him. And al-Qaeda wants to turn your morning commute into a bloodbath, apparently. The terror group reportedly highlighting ways to attack American subways in its jihadi magazine called Inspire. A step-by-step guide shows followers how to make homemade devices that can be clamped onto train tracks to cause derailments. The terrorists looking to exploit, of course, the vulnerability of the rail security here in the U.S.
All right, more than a dozen illegal immigrants found locked inside of a very hot van near the United States border with Mexico. A relative of somebody inside of that van, inside of the trailer there, tipping off police, leading them to a truck stop in Edinburgh, Texas. The 17 illegal immigrants were likely locked inside for 8 or 9 hours, but thankfully nobody was seriously hurt. This comes less than a month after 10 illegal immigrants were found dead in a tractor trailer in San Antonio, Texas.
Well, it is Extreme Makeover White House edition.
That's right. The West Wing getting some major renovations, including resurfacing hardwood floors in the Oval Office, also adding new carpet around 1600 Pennsylvania.
Crews also replacing some old HVAC and IT systems, we're told, also redoing the West Wing's lower lobby and Navy mess kitchen. President Trump is working from his National Golf Club in the meantime in New Jersey during the remodeling. He heads to Trump Tower today, his first time back there since his inauguration, where he will stay for a few days of some meetings. I believe Shinzo Abe is on tap this evening.
That's right.
With him.
Okay. All right, 10 minutes after the hour, the media seems to be blaming the right for the horrific attack in Charlottesville. But our next guest says there is no room for that right now. Lawrence Jones coming up next.
And is Senator Marco Rubio not at the top of a Venezuelan hit list? The chilling new reports from Homeland Security. Plus.
Is he going to jump? Oh!
Oh, boy. That's Tom Cruise. Finding it almost impossible to stick the landing. The high-flying mishap as he's doing his own stunts on the set of his new movie.
Ouch.
All right, the son of the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, vowing to take the White House with guns if the U.S. intervenes in their country. 27-year-old Nicolas Maduro, Guerra, telling state media, quote, if the U.S. soils the homeland, the rifles would come to New York and take the White House. Apparently the kid's not too bright. Of course, the White House is in D.C., not New York. He didn't know that. The threat comes after President Trump said he would not rule out sending the military to Venezuela in response to President Maduro's socialist takeover and all the terrible things that have been happening in that country. All right, Vice President Pence heads to Argentina today after speaking out against what he calls the tragedy of tyranny in Venezuela on the first leg of his South American tour.
Venezuela is sliding into dictatorship. And as President Trump has said, the United States will not stand by as Venezuela crumbles. We will continue to stand with free nations across our hemisphere until democracy is restored for the Venezuelan people.
The VP says he's confident they can find a peaceful solution. And all this as we learn a top Venezuelan politician may have ordered a hit on U.S. Senator Marco Rubio. The Florida senator has been a harsh critic of the socialist regime. He is a Cuban American. DHS says the threat came from Diosdado Cabello. That's President Maduro's right-hand man. Rubio called him the Pablo Escobar of Venezuela. The Department of Homeland Security says details of the assassination plot against Marco Rubio are not verified, but they are taking it seriously enough that Rubio's security detail has been beefed up.
Thank you very much, Rob. Well, as the nation stands together to denounce Saturday's hate-fueled attack in Charlottesville, the mainstream media is already pinning it on the right's so-called hateful rhetoric. So is that fair? Here to weigh in is the Blaze's Lawrence Jones. Lawrence, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We always love having you here.
Good morning, Heather.
So I want to begin with the statement from Charlottesville mayor. Here we have what he had to say, and I want to get your response.
He made a choice in his presidential campaign. I think you were seeing a direct line from what happened here this weekend to those choices.
A direct line to his choices. What do you think about that?
Well, I totally disagree. I think when we start putting hate on political parties, I think we're heading to disaster. The bottom line is that the individuals that did this are responsible for it. You can't pin this on a political party. When the left does it, I always advise the right not to accuse them, and I would suggest the left not accuse Republicans of being responsible for this as well.
Yeah, and the mainstream media as well, the media headlines, we can take a look at some of those that already are out. The Washington Post condemning Trump, saying that Charlottesville violence, but doesn't single out white nationalists. The LA Times saying that Trump responds to Charlottesville violence with vague statements, blaming many sides. Also, the New York Times, you can see that there. So what do we need to do?
Well, I would suggest that the media just take a chill pill. This is not the time for ratings or to play politics or to cause more division in the country. Secondly, I think that the president can take a next step of calling it what it is. I did the same thing when it came to President Obama with radical Islam. You got to call the enemy what they are. And I think that the president is being put in a tough position now, because now Pence is calling it for what it is. Other Republicans are calling for what it is. And his daughter called it white supremacy as well. So I don't know if the president quite
calling it domestic, and you're saying he should call it domestic terrorism. Okay.
Well, he should call it domestic terrorism and white supremacy, because that is the enemy. Now, I think the president feels that when he said bigotry, and he did call it a lot of another names, which would fall under that category, I think he's thinking from the perspective of what the big deal is. But I would encourage him, as a supporter of him, not the hating media, to call it for what it is and set the record straight. This is white supremacy. These are white nationalists, and they don't speak for the rest of us on the right.
Did you think that President Obama should have done the same thing following the shootings that happened in Charleston with Dylan Roof?
I do. I really do. But I think the problem is that President Obama had a constant conversation about race. Now, I will say, I wish the President Obama would have called radical Islam, which he didn't do a lot of times. And that was my criticism of the president. I think any terrorism, we have to be specific, because it's not only for just calling it just for everybody to feel good. It's so the enemy knows that we recognize who they are and we're going after them.
Yeah, and we've seen it building for a while now, so something certainly does need to be done about it before it happens again.
Exactly.
Lawrence, thank you so much.
We got to come together.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Rob?
All right, about 19 minutes after the hour, Colin Kaepernick is out of a job, but the NFL can't get rid of the anti-American trend that he started. We have more players now taking a knee during the country's national anthem. Plus, he is one of President Trump's most outspoken critics. Now rumors are swirling that New York City's mayor, not very unpopular here in New York, Bill de Blasio, wants a promotion. He's ready to run for president in 2020. And also, back-to-school crisis, why your kids may have a problem getting to school this year. Stay tuned. All right, a major crackdown in a major tourist destination over bootleg booze. Officials now warning tourists to watch what they drink.
Yeah, it's the story that we have been following. Tracy Carrasco from our sister network, Fox Business, is here with the details on the resort crackdown. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, guys. Mexican authorities swept through 31 resorts, restaurants, and nightclubs in Cancun and Playa del Carmen, suspending operations at 2 of them for serving what they're calling unsanitary alcohol. Among those suspended, the lobby bar at a resort where a 20-year-old Wisconsin woman drowned. Her family said that she was served that bootleg booze. The Mexican government is cracking down after dozens of tourists reported blacking out after drinking just moderate amounts of alcohol. As much as 36% of the alcohol consumed in Mexico is illegal, dangerous, and produced under unregulated circumstances.
Yeah,
very scary. Very strong and powerful, and it was so sad when that young girl died.
And some well-known bars as well in Cancun, Fat Tuesday being one of them.
Absolutely. All right, a school bus driver shortage right when school's about to start up?
Yep, just in time. School bus companies in the United States are spinning their wheels in an effort to get more drivers hired before the start of this school year. School Bus Fleet magazine surveyed the top 50 school bus contracts in the country, and they all said they had a shortage of some kind. 54% said it was a moderate shortage, while 22% described it as severe. 19% called their shortage mild, and 5% said they were flat out desperate. Yeah, not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
No, well, coming off a big weekend, a lot of people headed to the movie, and they were apparently interested in horror films this weekend.
Yes, that's right. Horror movie Annabelle Creation topped the box office this weekend with $35 million. Now, that's a surprise considering the movie only cost about $15 million to make. Holding on to second place, Dunkirk, which is in its fourth weekend. Coming in third place is Nut Job 2, Nutty by Nature.
Yeah, I saw Dunkirk this weekend.
I got it. I still got it. How was it?
I don't know. I don't get it. I don't get it while I was.
Wow.
Yeah,
You're the first person I've heard say that.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Al Gore now. He's got a big movie in the box office, not doing too well, huh?
Yes, Al Gore's An Inconvenient sequel, Truth to Power, isn't quite heating up the box office like his 2006 documentary, An Inconvenient Truth, about climate change did. Now, that movie brought in $25 million here in the U.S. and about the same amount abroad. And after about 3 weeks in theaters, Gore's follow-up has made just $2 million at the box office.
Always hard to have a sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially 10 years later.
Thanks, Tracy.
All right,
Thanks, guys.
Well, more football players are standing with Colin Kaepernick, apparently, by taking a seat during the national anthem.
There we go. Yeah, we're still not on the right camera. Last night, Seahawks defensive end Michael Bennett sat on the bench with a towel on his head as the rest of his team stood for the anthem at a preseason game. So it's happening again.
Yeah, now where are we going? Oakland Raiders running back. There you are.
Hey.
Marshawn Lynch sat down on Saturday night and ate a banana instead of honoring his country. So a lot of fallout from that, I'm sure.
We're going to see more of that, and it really hurt the NFL last year. We'll see the impact that it has this year. Okay, 26 minutes after the hour, Americans uniting after Saturday's horrific hate-fueled attack in Charlottesville, Virginia, but the left using this time to lecture anyone who disagrees with them.
For a party who called Islamic terrorism workplace violence, spare everybody the lectures.
And we'll have a live report from the scene there in Charlottesville. In the meantime, critics refuse to pay for a wall to protect our border. But one U.S. city wants to use hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep illegals inside it.
All right, welcome back and straight to a Fox News alert we've been following all morning. Vice President Mike Pence doubling down on President Trump's comments, doing some clarifying and condemning the violence in Charlottesville, coming to his defense, to the president's defense, in the face of critics who said that what the president said was not enough.
Yeah, all of this as the Department of Justice opens a hate crime investigation. Kelly Wright joining us now with the latest. Good morning, Kelly.
Heather and Rob, good morning to you both. The White House and the Vice President of the United States are defending President Trump's initial response to the racial unrest that erupted over the weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia. During a news conference in Columbia, Vice President Mike Pence shifted his focus back home. He made it clear that dangerous fringe hate groups have no place in American life.
We have no tolerance for hate and violence from white supremacists, neo-Nazis, or the KKK. These dangerous fringe groups have no place in American public life and in the American debate.
While people in the town of Charlottesville seek ways to bring calm and healing to their community, Republican and Democrat lawmakers are urging President Trump to denounce the white supremacist groups and unrest.
We all need to have some self-reflection on how did we get to this point?
The Justice Department is conducting a civil rights hate crime investigation on this horrible car crash that you're looking at that ran into people, killing one and injuring 19 others. 20-year-old James Fields Jr., the driver, is in custody.
I'd like to see a task force of the Department of Justice and Homeland Security to look at the size and scope of these groups, report back to Congress to see if we need to do more in terms of suppressing them. I would urge
Senator Lindsey Graham also pointing out the president needs to say more about denouncing the white supremacist group. The White House again saying that the president has. By the way, the Justice Department tells Fox News the driver of that vehicle could be charged with domestic terrorism. Back to you.
All right, Kelly, thanks so much.
Thanks, Kelly. Well, that does bring us to our look at who's talking. And this morning, Waters World host Jesse Waters says that the criticism of President Trump's response to the Charlottesville attack highlights the left's hypocrisy.
The same people who don't like Donald Trump saying Islamic terrorism are urging him now to say white supremacism. For a party who called Islamic terrorism workplace violence, spare everybody the lectures. If hundreds of thousands of Islamic terrorists have nothing to do with Islam, then why does one white supremacist have anything to do with Donald Trump? We can use the left's own rationalizations against them all day, but we won't. It's tedious to listen to both sides fight over which side hates Nazis more. What we saw in Charlottesville were fringe fanatics who don't represent this country. America is not a racist nation. It's time we stop acting like it is.
All right, in just hours from now, the suspect accused of mowing down counter-protesters in Charlottesville will face a judge for the first time. This as we learn more about James Fields, including a very sick infatuation that he has with Adolf Hitler. Matt Finn is live in Charlottesville, Virginia, where a vigil was held last night for the woman killed in that attack. Matt.
Yeah, Rob, sad and somber Monday morning here as this town and the entire country comes to terms with the hate-filled riots that engulfed Charlottesville and left 3 people dead. A vigil was held here last night in remembrance of the 32-year-old woman that was killed and the 2 state troopers killed. The driver, police say James Fields Jr. intentionally drove his car through the crowds, killing 32-year-old Heather Hayes. That driver is scheduled to be arraigned in just a few hours, being charged with second-degree murder. Friends of the victim say she was in the streets, likely protesting the white supremacist and just trying to do the right thing.
She was a sweet person, and I just want to do my best to make sure that, her family doesn't have to worry about, cost of anything. And, I thank her because she wasn't only standing up for me.
And there is some strong video. We warned you, some of it is graphic. Police say the driver, James Fields Jr., intentionally drove his gray Dodge into the crowds of people in Charlottesville on Saturday, killing the young woman and hurting 19 others. Now, this morning, it's not clear if the driver will physically appear in the district court behind me or if he will appear by video. As you can imagine, there are safety concerns here in this town after riots left 3 people dead here. Tragedy. Back to you, Rob.
Yeah, and you saw there were pictures of him walking with the white supremacist groups, I believe, what was it, the day before or moments before?
Matt, thank you so much.
Thanks. Well, tensions nationwide, of course, reaching a fever pitch following that deadly rally in Charlottesville. Anti-protesters turning Washington State's peaceful freedom rally into chaos, clashing with officers on the streets in Seattle. And the protesters, you can see they were armed with axe handles and 2x4s, taunting police, hoping to incite violence. And then officers in riot gear, they were forced to use pepper spray and flash bang grenades to keep the anti-protesters separated. So in all of that chaos, 3 people arrested for obstruction and assault. Thankfully, though, no one was injured.
All right, Senator Elizabeth Warren blasting President Trump over one of his biggest campaign promises.
Don't even think about it. We will build the wall.
By the way, Mr. President, we're never, ever going to build your stupid wall.
All right, the Massachusetts Democrat widely thought to be considered running for president against President Trump in 2020, and she's already building a merchandise empire, an online store that goes beyond traditional political items. You see here, selling things like this temporary tattoo that's currently sold out with "Nevertheless, she persisted," and that's written in her handwriting.
Temporary tattoo. Pretty creative anyway.
All right, I guess I'm going to keep going. Yeah. Another one of President Trump's critics could also have his eye on the White House. The New York Post reporting New York City's mayor, Bill de Blasio, may run for president in 2020 as well. It could be a big field for the Democrats coming up. The Post says de Blasio confident he'll win re-election for mayor next year in New York, and he will try to convince progressives that he is a better option than Senator Warren or Bernie Sanders for president. And New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo also widely rumored to be running in 2020. 2020. Everybody going to take a shot.
And there you have it. But do they all have the tattoos, temporary tattoos? That might be the key.
Yeah.
Well, now we're going to check with Adam Klotz, who is standing by in the Weather Center to talk a little bit more about the weather forecast for the week ahead. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. And I have some good news really across the country. A mild start to this week, kind of a calm start to the week as well. We've seen some severe weather here the last several days. Not too bad out there right now. Here's your temperature, still sitting in the upper 70s, the mid 70s across the south. To the north, temperatures have fallen down into the mid 60s. We do continue to see very heavy showers, not in the eastern half of the country. Shouldn't be too bad today, but the western half of the country, still monsoonal type of moisture funneling in. And every time we get going into the afternoon hours, we do see an explosion of moisture. The other thing I want to show you, Tropical Storm Gert continuing to spin just off the coast now of Florida. That's going to lift its way up, eventually maybe becoming a hurricane. But guys, there's no concern for this one running into the coast. One we'll be watching, but again, I'm not really expecting this to be impacting the United States.
All right.
Good news.
It could be an active season, though. Yeah,
yes, it could.
Keep an eye on it. All right. Thanks so much.
Well, you could call Tom Cruise's latest mission incomplete.
Tell you what, you got to give him props for trying. He really does the job. This TMZ exclusive video shows Tom Cruise crashing into a building during a stunt that he's performing on his own while filming Mission Impossible 6 in London, the 6th one.
Yeah, the 55-year-old, I can't believe he's 55. He's known for doing his own stunts in films. Unclear if he was injured in this one, but, I mean, bouncing off the side of a building, I think, probably hurt.
That's why he's a movie star.
Yeah.
That's why they pay him the big bucks. He does the job.
Well, the time now is about 20 minutes until the top of the hour, and critics are quick to attack the president for talking tough with North Korea.
President Trump sounds more like a North Korean leader, unfortunately, than an American leader.
We have never heard this kind of bluster from an American president to another world leader.
But the American people couldn't disagree more. A fair and balanced debate coming up.
Also, an inside job, former communications director Anthony Scaramucci breaking his silence with new claims about the swamp he says is trying to take down the president.
And a license to be PC. Hundreds of people now refusing, opting for the Gender X option at the DMV.
All right, Anthony Scaramucci says the swamp is trying to take down the president from the inside. The former White House communications director speaking out for the first time after being fired just 10 days into his job.
Scaramucci says that they don't like the president because he's an outsider.
The president is not a representative of the political establishment class. And so for whatever reason, people have made a decision that they want to eject him. I think that there are elements inside of Washington, also inclusive in the White House, that are not necessarily abetting the president's interests or his agenda.
Well, Scaramucci adds that the president needs to bring in more loyalists to pass his agenda.
All right, an American city is considering spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars to keep illegal immigrant criminals, I should say, in our country. A task force in Tacoma, Washington, says they want the city council to consider using $440,000 to provide legal representation for illegal immigrants at a local detention center after they've been arrested for crimes. City council officials say they are receptive to this idea in the state of Washington, but are not ready to implement it just yet.
But to the south of Tacoma, San Francisco officials making a major announcement today, also defying the president's illegal immigration agenda. California's Attorney General and the city's attorney are holding a press conference at 1 Eastern Standard Time, threatening sanctuary jurisdiction policies. Cities who don't allow local police to cooperate with immigration agents could have their federal funding blocked.
All righty. All right, well, we were going to go to Steve Doocy for a check what's coming up on Fox and Friends. If we have him, we don't. We'll just go to break. Oh, he's ready. Hey, I'm ready.
Okay. We're kind of all over the place today.
That's right. Good morning to you, Rob. Good morning to you, Heather. We showed you folks the shocking video on Friday. A police officer shot at point blank range. Take a look. It is a little disturbing.
Shots fired! Dispatch me, tell my family I love them.
Oh my goodness, that's the voice of the officer who shot that video, all caught on the police officer's glasses. And Officer Quincy Smith is going to join us this morning to share his miraculous story of survival. We got a busy 3 hours, kicks off about 15 minutes from right now, right here on the channel everybody trusts for their morning news. Fox and Friends First returns in 2 minutes.
Morning, looking at Times Square where the lights never go out here in New York City. Some clouds in the sky overhead. Hopefully you're beginning your week the right way this morning. And you are, because you're joining Fox and Friends First. We have this story to tell you about right now, though. Forget male or female. Hundreds of Oregon residents are marking X on their gender on driver's licenses and state IDs. 266 people have applied for the option since the state approved the rule change last month. Washington, D.C. is the only other jurisdiction where gender-neutral IDs actually exist. And an American university says that their diversity training requirement is not mandatory. The University of Wisconsin-Madison says that their new pilot diversity program is more of an expectation. That's what they call it. It's one of 3 programs listed for incoming freshmen, costing nearly $200,000. Officials say that their change in tone stems from student backlash, who think that it will be a burden if it is, in fact, enforced. Rob?
Okay, Fox News Alert just in, and some pretty good news here. A new blow to North Korea. The nation of China now saying it will stop importing North Korean coal, iron, fish, and other goods, and this will begin very soon on September 5th. This coming as the United Nations has also hit North Korea with tough sanctions meant to cripple their economy. And the China thing, pretty good news for President Trump, who's been really calling out China for supporting North Korea. In the meantime, from fire and fury to locked and loaded, President Trump now being berated by the media over his tough talk on Twitter for North Korea.
President Trump sounds more like a North Korean leader, unfortunately, than an American leader.
It used to be that we looked at the North Koreans and said, those are the nuts with nukes. But now it looks a little bit like we have our own nut with nukes.
This is the first time that the dangerous apocalyptic statements of the North Korean regime have been met by dangerous apocalyptic statements by the President of the United States.
We have never heard this kind of bluster from an American president to another world leader.
But the president's approval rating actually has gone up in the days following those statements and the tough talk after 8 years of very flaccid talk. Here for a fair and balanced debate, former Bernie Sanders surrogate Chuck Rocha, and Hudson Institute fellow Rebecca Heinrichs. Guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning.
Morning, Rob.
Morning. All right, Chuck, we're going to start with you. Explain to me the problem with the way the president has been handling North Korea so far from the left. What is the issue?
Well, I think that words do matter, and I think that in all instances, all of us as Americans want to make sure that the president's doing everything he can to keep the homeland safe. I think there's different ways to do that. I think you can actually look at China and what they just did with their sanctions to actually put some pressure on North Korea, to kind of slap them around and go like, you got to get in line because you got to feed and clothe your people instead of just sitting around with bluster and hard words. I would remind all Americans that 1 million soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan got hurt because we had a guy who wanted to have tough words.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Let's go to a poll, though. I want to show people what the approval rating for President Trump has done since he started talking tough with North Korea. I believe this is going to be before 39% approving, 59% disapproving. The numbers haven't been too good for President Trump. But this here, let's show you after some of those tweets to North Korean's leader Kim Jong-un, up to 45% and 53%. That's a pretty strong jump, and I think a lot of people think North Korea is a big part of that. Rebecca, the president has been talking a lot tougher and a lot different than we heard the last 8 years, which pretty much just acted like Kim Jong-un didn't exist. What do you think?
Well, this tough talk doesn't just have an effect on North Korea. It had an effect on China. There's a good reason why China is now being serious about enforcing sanctions. It doesn't want a war on the Korean Peninsula. And if it believes that the President of the United States is serious about this, then they're more inclined to actually do their part and enforce sanctions. But again, this president doesn't just talk tough. I mean, he also backs it up with action. Remember, 59 Tomahawk missiles against Assad, Syria. We're talking about the Moab in Afghanistan to go after those tunnels that ISIS uses, and delegating authority to our military commanders so they can actually effectively go after ISIS without the bureaucracy from Washington. So this president talks and he backs it up with action, and that is giving us some serious results.
And I do think it is fair to say that China's actions now doing this, I think, is a direct result of just being called out over and over and over by the president for supporting a country with a crazy leader that now has nuclear weapons. Chuck, let's go to you for a second. I want to ask you something. Do you think President Obama handled North Korea well in 8 years?
I think there's a lot of blame to go around for everybody. And President Obama was my president. I'm a Democrat, and I don't think that all of his foreign policies were always right on. But at least we brought people together. We had a conversation. He wasn't on his Twitter account talking about Fast and Furious or whatever else he wanted to talk about, but he was trying to figure out results. But I think there's plenty of blame for a lot of our politicians who've been out there and done a lot of wrong things when it comes to foreign policy.
Yeah, and I do think that's fair, because we've seen Republican presidents as well not know how to handle this dictator. Rebecca, over to you for one quick question. You have all of this talk on Twitter. Does it seem that nobody is going to really make a move?
No, I think that President Trump has made it clear that he's willing to make a move. So, and now we're watching again. In the past, every time the president, even President Obama, made threats, it's just that nobody believed him when he made those threats. But when he did, North Korea responded with another missile test or another nuclear test. So, you know, we got to get serious here. This is not just about coming together. This is about actually stopping Kim Jong-un in North Korea.
Guys, thanks so much for coming on this morning. We do appreciate it. Have a good morning. Heather, over to you.
All right, good stuff. Well, the time now is about 5 minutes until the top of the hour. What does this look like to you? Take a look. One police officer claims that her pizza came with the message "pig" on it. We'll talk about that. And there's a snake near this baby's crib. Can you spot it?